cultural expert, Professor Sihawu Ngubane, who is a professor in African languages at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He joins us now on the line. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Talk us through what happens now, and perhaps let me start with the importance of what we just saw in Imbongi, the praise singing, in particular for the Buthelezi clan. Talk us through the significance of that before we get to what happens next.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to pay respect to the late Prince Buthelezi and condolences to the entire family. I think coming back to your question, Griselda, it is very important to invoke the ancestors through praise singing, because when you praise the people who lived before. And that is why some of the figures that were form part of the Buthelezi clan were mentioned in the praises, just to say, welcome your son as he departs and coming to join you. I think it is very important because it links the living and the dead.
And let's go to what happens next in terms of culture. How are we expected to see over the next couple of hours, over the next couple of days, in terms of culture? What are we expected to see next?
In terms of the Zulu culture, the moment the word has come out of the departing of Prince Buthelezi, the mourning period starts. People will mourn his passing on from now onward until the day when he will be laid to rest. So the whole people, more especially the Buthelezi clan and people in the surrounding of Mahlabathini, and also the whole province of KwaZulu will be in mourning as we speak now, just to pay respect to the late king of the Buthelezi clan.
I want to bring you in, Mzwai, as well. I mean, you earlier indicated that, a lot is going to be said. I want to talk about this complex legacy. Yeah. Incredibly complex, because you can't speak about the late Nkosi Buthelezi without looking at, I would say, the bitter rivalry that was had with the ANC, which then resulted in that breakaway. Was it 1970?
1975.
75, that's it.
Well, Buthelezi is, in his own words, a child of the ANC. One of the things that he would have liked to do before his passing was the reconciliation. So he kept saying, despite what happened, so he really would like to be recognized, because he was part of those who founded the Youth League of the ANC.
Yes.
And then, of course, a number of contributions that obviously he made in the development of the political system in our country. But in this instance, we can't run away from the fact that at some point there was divergence of views on how to approach the freedom of this country. And then with the liberation movement advocating for sanctions and him against sanctions. So those were some of the polarizing aspects about the IFP or Inkatha then and the ANC or the liberation movement on the whole. So all, and he's taking part in the, yes, he was not part of those which were called as TPVC states, but he then took part through what is called self-governing territories. Remember, he was the chief minister of KwaZulu at the time. So given that that was still part of the system and the state, so meant that those who were fighting for liberation were going to see you as someone who's collaborating. That's why that kind of violence ended up really ripping apart not only KZN, in fact, here in Gauteng as well. So those are some of the complexities, but we know that in the latter days of a democratic South Africa, somehow there was great understanding in terms of what needs to be done to rebuild this country. But the fact of the matter is that thousands and thousands of people died between the ANC and the IFP because of these political differences emanating from their strategies or their approach towards attaining freedom.
A word which will often be played around with or be spoken of is this checkered legacy, the checkered history. How does that then filter into how we speak of the formation of the IFP, him being a child of the ANC, but then breaking away and saying that, in fact, it was not just that bitter rivalry that I spoke about earlier on, but you want to come in?
Yeah, no, let me come in. So also, just to give a bit of context, why some of this difficulty. You know, he used to be very great friends with people like Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
Margaret Thatcher was totally opposed to the ANC, you know, what she thought of Mandela. So he was also very big friends with people like Ronald Reagan. So the establishment, even the international establishment, which was not necessarily part and parcel of the liberation struggle. So, and those were the people that he was seen with in the main. And that really evoked a lot of resentment by many people who felt this is part of betrayal, so to speak. But of course, as he normally would say in his own words, he felt, particularly on the issue of sanctions, he felt if we sanction the country, so we're bringing more poverty. But you know, politics is quite an interesting game. It's very complex. It's not simple and straightforward. That is part of his package. As much as in his later days, I mean, he was very revered. So clearly in his earlier days, there was a lot of bickering, particularly with the ANC and the liberation movement on the whole.
I want to bring in Professor Sihawu once again. Prof, you were talking to us about what is expected, over the next couple of days in terms of paying tribute to certainly people could say a political heavyweight, even though checkered is what we will hear over the next couple of days.
So I didn't hear very well the question you were breaking, but as I said earlier on, from now onward, the people will be gathering at the Buthelezi Royal House to mourn his passing, and also relatives and the people around the area will be coming. And also we are hoping that most people will come, because people were coming to attend Umkhosi Umhlanga in Nongoma. So people are in the neighborhood. So we expect more people coming to pay their last respect to the Buthelezi family.
Yeah, our colleague Jadely Polser is in Yogeni, in fact, where the Reed dance is expected to take place. What does this then mean, perhaps for those who don't understand? Does this mean a halt to the Reed dance, or does it continue?
Today marks the last day of the celebration of Umkhosi Umhlanga, which is the Red Dance, and it is up to His Majesty to suspend the whole ceremony, because this is the last leg where His Majesty is going to receive the reed from the maidens, and also after receiving the reed, there will be a gathering where His Majesty is expected to address the maidens and the public who will be attending. But now that the family member has passed on, because traditionally and culturally, Prince Mangosuthu is like his father, because he is cousin to his father. So it's like he has lost his father. So I think the ceremony should be suspended from where I'm sitting.
All right, we'll come back to you in just a moment, Prof. Thanks very much indeed. Mzwayi, I want to bring it to, many had said, his role in installing, or the role that he played with King Misuzulu Zwelithini, and the role that he played in ushering the Zulu nation into that particular transition. Talk to us a bit about the importance of the role that he played there, not just with King Misuzulu, but his father. And the oversight that he gives
absolutely.
In terms of.
Yes, I mean, now I think it's Professor Sihawu who did indicate that this is the third king that he's serving as traditional prime minister. I mean, King Zwelithini as well, he was his prime minister, and of course, the father of the king as well, King Cyprian. That tells you how entrenched and how involved he is. Remember, he also is part of the royal family. Correct. Because he's born of Princess Magogo. That tells you that his role is not just the role of someone who perhaps reads or learns about this. He has a deep insight. In fact, I think it came to the fore for all to see with the installation of the recent king. And South Africans generally said, wait not for him, we don't know what would have happened. But he was able to be that voice, to be that light, to be that someone who could go back, who could tell you, so how were things done, how are things supposed to be done, how he used to do it, what he has been doing. So that role was quite significant. I think the king himself, and I know that at some point, there's a very interesting Zulu saying, I don't know whether I'll be able to put it properly in English, where it normally says, I think he who crowns the king doesn't rule with the king, right. Something along those lines. Yeah. So in later days, there was that friction.
And I wanted to talk about that. There was that rift. There were issues regarding the Ingonyama Trust. And there seemed to have been some friction which played out very publicly.
Yes. I think also that has to do with political considerations. As much as we are speaking about Buthelezi as a traditional leader, this is a politician, this is a political leader. So he has interest in seeing who comes next to the king. So the judge that was chairing the Ingonyama Trust, so Buthelezi was comfortable with him because he is a political person when all is said and done. But of course, the king now is on the throne. He is able to make his own decisions. Some of those decisions may not necessarily be that are favorable to his prime minister. So what made some of these things sometimes so confused is that as much as he was the traditional prime minister, he was a politician at the same time. So those interests, declared or undeclared, would always come up.
All right. So I will come back to you very shortly. Prof, you did allude to what is expected over the next couple of days, but let's talk about, Inkosi Buthelezi, and you could clearly see a sense of pride for the Zulu nation in the manner in which he did things, presiding over, various kings, and the role that he played, KwaZulu, in terms of ensuring that things are done a particular way. And I want you to also allude on the rifts that we have also seen and how those played out publicly. I wouldn't necessarily say it's something that we've seen play out so publicly in the past.
I think that element was quite unfortunate because, as the father figure, as I have alluded before, they needed to sit down and iron out their differences because the issue of Ingonyama Trust caused the rift between His Majesty and Inkosi Buthelezi, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And unfortunately, they never had a chance to sit down and try to resolve the problem. But in this case, you know that when someone passes on, we usually not hold grudge for people who have gone. I think this is one of the things that needs to happen. I think His Majesty must also come to terms to forgive whatever happened during his last moments, so that they can move onward and carry the legacy of the late King Zwelithini. Because once one is gone, there's nothing else that they can repair at this point in time. And also holding a grudge will further complicate the situation. I think that is a chapter that is closed now.
Prof, we'll come back to you very shortly. And I know, Ms. Wandile, you've been giving commentary on this since very early this morning. We'll certainly touch base with you much later on in the day.